I've been listening with great interest to Ed Davey giving testimony at the Post Office inquiry, and he was preceded by Pat McFadden, who's now a minister again, and had previously been in the same position that Ed Davey held in as a junior minister with responsibility for the Post Office. Pat McFadden was busy blaming others for not telling him about Horizon. He said he was very reliant on others telling the truth about Horizon, and of course that is not what they did. That's with hindsight. And what both Pat McFadden and I think Ed Davey are trying to get to, and what is quite fascinating, is their understanding of the idea of lying. So Ed Davey was picked up just before the lunch break. He'd said that senior officials, executives in the Post Office administration had lied to him. And when he was challenged by the barrister, is this an accusation of lying, or is this about a sense of being fed untruths? He recognised it was really about a sense of being fed untruths, though he did start off by identifying David Smith and Paula Venables as the officials who dealt with him, and therefore the ones who passed information that is untrue. I think that's what he actually says. They passed information that is untrue. But of course, that doesn't mean that they were lying. So when somebody tells you you are a liar, that is quite a serious accusation. It occurs occasionally in the comments section, and people seem to think that, that this means that somebody is intentionally spreading deceit. That doesn't necessarily. So they know what the truth is, and they are intentionally distorting that. It's quite a big statement, so Ed Davey is aware that Post Office Limit as a body were misleading him, but he says that he's not sure who is responsible within the Post Office Limited. And that is the difficult thing for him to know personally. It is the inquiry that is there to identify who is culpable. I think that's a really good point. And that's the positive side of Ed Davey's witness, of Ed Davey's submission to the Post Office inquiry, and what he's saying. But other than that, it was preceded by so much guff about it didn't occur to me to look at the IT. I was focused on keeping the post office. I was focused on keeping the post offices open. I was focused on devising a new post office bill. So he wasn't really doing his job. So in other words, he wasn't doing his job. And this comes down to the issue of, you are at fault for failures of omission as well as failures of commission. And I think Ed Davey is seriously at fault, as possibly even Pat McFadden, for failures of omission, failures to ask the necessary questions. And it wasn't as if these questions weren't being asked in front of him. Priti Patel asked him questions, but he relied on the ministerial process, actually on the process which all MPs subscribe to. So if you ask your MP for information about something, that letter is then passed on to a central board that drafts a paragraph or two that the MP then dutifully repeats in the letter back to you. So that letter is odd. If you do form criticism on it, it's quite clear that there's different hands involved in the different paragraphs of that letter. So you end up with a lot of gobbledygook, which I've received a number of times from my former MP in Rugby, and it means nothing, and it's often contradictory because it's a series of paragraphs bolted together, often composed by completely different people, plucked out of a bank of paragraphs that are available for that purpose, whether those are letters to the constituents or responses to parliamentary questions, written responses to parliamentary questions. And Ed Davey says he was more concerned about the social purpose of the post office, how the public valued their post offices, and then he says, and their sub-postmasters. Well, not enough. Not enough. He wasn't enough interested in this. If that is his interest, then he should surely have started asking questions about the prosecutions of so many sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses who were valued by the public. Why didn't he ask these questions? It is an error of omission. And he says that he relied on the Postal Services Act 2001, which meant that the day-to-day operation of the post offices was done at arm's length from the ministerial operation, which was about strategy. Then he was asked by the barrister, did he ever look at the Postal Services Act 2001 or seek further guidance? And the answer was no. So in every way, this person who is now the leader of his party is exposed as somebody who is slight, woolly, and vacuous. He doesn't do his job, and he thinks he can get away with it because he was relying on other people. But he doesn't ask the fundamental questions. Ignorance, in other words, is his defence. But ignorance is not a defence in the face of the law, is it? And I find it extraordinary that a former minister and the head of a political party who likes water sports, who's confessed to indulging in water sports, should think that we should respect him because he says he doesn't know what he's doing. I don't think that's about not knowing what you're doing. I think that's about further proof that this man is a figure of fun. This man is not a serious politician and not a serious individual. And a lot of people were sent to court, were imprisoned, lost their lives because of his indolence. Would we apply the same standards to Boris Johnson that we apply to Pat McFadden? That, oh, okay, he's just otherwise engaged. No. We hold Boris Johnson to account for his indolence. He may not personally have been supervising those parties, but he should have known what was going on. The same thing is true of Pat McFadden. The same thing is true of Ed Davey. They should have known what was going on. That was their job. And they did it for not just a matter of months. They did it for 20 months, 2 years, whatever. That was their job. If the minister doesn't know what's going on, what is the point of having a minister? And if they don't know who lied to them when it all goes wrong, again, what is the point? This exposes not only an inadequacy on the part of Ed Davey, but an inadequacy on the part of the system. Is the system set up so that people don't know what's going on? Is the system set up so that people can deny responsibility? And if that's the case, then Boris should still be in power. I'm not defending Boris. I'm just saying it's inconsistent. We can't have one rule for one person and one rule for another. And I think Ed Davey's testimony in the post office consultation in this investigation about the Horizon failure comes across in a very short space of time as extremely woolly, extremely lightweight, and certainly not fit for any future ministerial office, and I think not really fit to lead his party. This is a person who isn't interested in detail. Boris was not interested in detail. Liz Truss wasn't interested in detail. Are we suggesting that the majority of people in our government systems today cannot be bothered with detail? Because that doesn't look good for our parliamentary system does it.